One of the things that I'd like to share with you tonight is we're at the Urban Ecology Center, and it's an incredibly beautiful facility. The smell of cedar and the threshold of the door, all of that is just awesome. The things that we're up against, and even, I'll just say, the things that our waters and our lands are up against are incredible. I can't even fathom $15.1 million that was contributed to the Republicans by mining companies. I can't even fathom that much money. The things we're up against and the things our lands and our waters are up against are incredible. And what I'd say to you is that talking about a dream and telling you that that is real is not the easiest thing, because you're all practical folks and you're all busy and you're all engaged in dealing with the reality of our economy and feeding your families and taking care of yourself and the things around you. But you know what? When it comes to talking about the fact that you can be in a wilderness setting and get a weird feeling, and all of a sudden you can be humble, it's tough to describe. We're talking a lot about things that are essentially intangibles, things that you sometimes can't see, feel, taste, or touch. Sometimes you can, but in a lot of ways, the spirit, the power, the mystery of these things are intangibles. But if you spend any amount of time in some of the places that we were shown on these photos or along lake shores like that, you know what I'm talking about. And to that end, it's interesting times. Interesting times with things moving really, really fast. People, legislation, all that stuff. And it's going to take courage. It's going to take courage on the part of legislators to stand up for this stuff. But it's going to take courage for folks to speak the truth. Even when the practical side of things would say, well, that's foolish. And it's a story, it was captured in a story I shared with the legislature when I had to give the State of the Tribes. And the State of the Tribes, my hand's shaking a little bit right now, but when I had to give the State of the Tribes, I wanted to drink water so bad, but I was shaking like that, and I knew I'd spill the water all over the place. So I sat there and I gave that thing with the dry mouth. But I wanted to say what I had to say. One of the things I told those guys was about Sigurd Olson. Sigurd Olson on a canoe trip, talking about the power and the mystery. He wrote this story in a book called Runes of the North. And he feels the awe, the wonder. He's in touch with what Kipling meant by something lost beyond the ranges. Comes around the rock outcropping, and he and his crew see a fire in the distance. So they paddle up to that fire, and they join a group of timber cruisers up in the Boundary Waters area. And these timber cruisers are talking about all the big pine and the big red pine that he was just completely lost in. And they're talking about stumpage and board feet and lumber and how everything that he was looking at in terms of forest was destined for the mills. And he acknowledged that in that moment, that wonder, that awe, that mystery was lost. And that he sat there feeling foolish like a child in the face of what these practical men could do. If Sigurd Olson can get shook to his core, you can imagine what it's like for all of us to try and stand up and talk about land and water when guys are sitting there looking at $15.1 billion or $1 million coming into their coffers, when they're sitting there and they're saying, you got 2 minutes. But we still, you know, that little saying I've seen on Facebook, you know, speak the truth even if your voice shakes. It's interesting times, and it's going to call for courageousness. It's going to call for the shouldering of speaking for some of these things. Because the other sad fact is that we're dealing with some folks who have lost their connection. And rather than be angry and mad about that, I see people that need to be cared for, prayed for, and helped to think about and rediscover some of these true connections. That's one of the reasons in one of our testimonies we sent a drum song, forward as our official testimony. It was a prayer to call in Thunderbirds to help these men see what they're truly dealing with rather than just dollar signs and money. They need help. And it's going to take courage to do that. Now, Sigurd Olson didn't quit at that fire. He and Bob Marshall and the others went on to fight, and they launched what they called canoe diplomacy. They took these leaders and these people that were making decisions, and they got them in canoes, they got them out in the wilderness, and then they asked them to think about this stuff. Canoe diplomacy. Such a beautiful concept. The Republican can't vote until they've spent a 3-day camping trip in Penokee Hills and that watershed. But they went on to establish the Boundary Waters Canoe area. They went on to establish Bob Marshall Wilderness area. And they set public policy forward that understood what these quiet places and what these pristine areas meant, not only to humans, but to that big lake right there. Because that big lake right there that you see in that picture is alive. And that green area is a great big filter that takes all the upland water and all those things that we do as humans, takes it and takes care of that water before it releases it out into that big lake. Sigurd Olson and all those guys understood that. That ain't just for us. Human beings leave Mother Earth. Mother Nature carries on, right? But if Mother Nature leaves us, what happens to humans? Who's the pitiful one? Yeah, they understood that. These things are important. They play a role, and they're important not only from an ecological perspective, not only from a human perspective in terms of life and health, but also from a cultural perspective, also from a place that we can't see, touch, taste, a place from where those intangibles are. And I'll tell you what, we need to stand up, we need to be courageous, and we need to tell and help these legislators rediscover that. So I wanted to say that much. So thank you very much for your time and attention.